I stared at the letter in my hands, reading it for the fourth time, hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves into something less absurd. The heavy cardstock paper, embossed with Davidson and Associates Legal Services, felt like it was burning my fingers. My name is Marin, and my grandfather just posthumously challenged me to become a millionaire. $500,000 in 12 months, I muttered, sinking deeper into my mother's worn leather couch. What kind of twisted game is this? Mom appeared in the doorway of her kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. You've been staring at that letter for 20 minutes. Want to tell me what's going on? I cleared my throat. Remember how Grandpa Jack always said I had potential, but needed proper motivation? I made air quotes with trembling fingers. Well, apparently, he left me an inheritance. $2 million. Mom's eyes widened. That's unexpected. Oh, it gets better. I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. I only get it if I can prove I've independently earned $500,000 within the next year. Otherwise, it all goes to charity. The dish towel dropped from her hands. He what? According to his lawyers, he called it incentivizing excellence. I stood up, pacing the familiar living room where I'd spent countless Sunday dinners. Who does this? Who dangles $2 million in front of their granddaughter, like some sort of twisted carrot? Mom's face did that thing where she's trying not to show emotion, but her eyes give everything away. Your grandfather had his own way of doing things. That's putting it mildly. I stopped at the mantel, picking up an old photo of Grandpa Jack at my college graduation. He was beaming, but now I could see something calculating in his eyes. Did you know about this? No, she said quietly, but I'm not surprised. Dad always thought struggle built character. He wasn't exactly thrilled when I married your father and chose to be a teacher instead of joining the family business. My phone buzzed. A text from Nolan. Dinner at my parents' tonight. Mom's making her famous pot roast. Don't forget. Great. Just what I needed. An evening with my future mother-in-law, who already thought I wasn't good enough for her precious son. I could picture Celeste Granger's perfectly manicured eyebrows rising when she heard about this inheritance challenge. What are you going to do? Mom asked, breaking into my thoughts. I set the photo down harder than necessary. I'm going to do it. I'm going to earn that money. Honey, that's a lot of pressure to put on yourself. $500,000 in a year? I've already got my online business bringing in decent money. With some expansion. I trailed off, mental calculations running wild. Besides, this isn't just about the inheritance anymore. It's about proving something. To whom? Your grandfather's already gone. To myself. I picked up my bag, suddenly energized. And to everyone who ever looked at me like I was just skating by on Nolan's family connections. Mom's expression softened. Marin, sweetie, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I hugged her quickly. I have to go. Dinner with the Grangers awaits, and I need to figure out how to break this news to Nolan. As I drove home, my mind raced with possibilities. My handmade jewelry business had been steadily growing, but to hit $500,000 in profits within a year? I'd need to scale up dramatically, take risks, maybe even step on some toes. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Nolan. Mom wants to know if you're still doing that crafting thing, or if you've considered the position at Dad's firm. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, a plan beginning to form. Grandpa Jack wanted to motivate me? Fine. But he'd probably never imagined his challenge would end up completely reshaping not just my business, but every relationship in my life. Game on, Grandpa. Game on. The Grangers' dining room always felt like a museum, beautiful, cold, and full of things I wasn't supposed to touch. I sat rigid in my chair, the weight of Celeste's scrutiny heavier than the sterling silver fork in my hand. So, Marin, Celeste said, cutting her pot roast with surgical precision, Nolan tells me your little jewelry business is keeping you occupied. I caught Nolan's eye across the table, but he suddenly became very interested in his green beans. Actually, I have some exciting news about that. My voice sounded too loud in the formal dining room. I'm expanding the business. Significantly. Everett Granger looked up from his phone for the first time since dinner began. Oh? And where are you securing the capital for this expansion? Before I could answer, Celeste jumped in. Darling, you're not asking Nolan to invest, are you? You know how I feel about mixing business with pleasure. No, I said firmly, setting down my fork. Actually, it's related to my grandfather's will. He left me an inheritance, but there's a condition attached. I need to earn $500,000 independently within the next year. The silence that followed was deafening. Nolan choked on his wine. $500,000? Celeste's perfectly plucked eyebrows arched toward her hairline. From selling handmade trinkets. They're artisanal pieces, Nolan corrected weakly, finally finding his voice. And Marin's quite successful already. Successful is relative, dear. Celeste dabbed her lips with her napkin. Everett, didn't you mention there was an opening in the marketing department? I did. Everett nodded, finally pocketing his phone. Good benefits, clear advancement path, much more stable than entrepreneurship. My chest tightened. I appreciate the thought, but I'm committed to growing my own business. Commitment is admirable, Celeste said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. Though sometimes wisdom lies in knowing when to accept help, especially with a wedding to plan. I felt Nolan tense across the table. We hadn't even officially announced our engagement yet. Mother, Nolan started. I'm simply saying, Celeste continued, reaching for her wine glass, that certain lifestyle expectations come with being a Granger. We wouldn't want anyone feeling overwhelmed. The pot roast turned to ash in my mouth. I'm quite capable of managing both my business and my personal life. Of course you are, dear. Celeste's smile didn't reach her eyes. Though I must ask, this inheritance condition, it seems rather convenient, doesn't it? My fork clattered against the plate. Excuse me, Mother, please, Nolan interrupted, but his protest sounded more like a whimper. I'm only looking out for everyone's interests, Celeste said. After all, we barely know anything about Marin's family. And now suddenly there's this mysterious inheritance with specific conditions. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the hardwood floor. My grandfather built his entire business from nothing. He believed in earning success, not inheriting it. The barb hit home. Celeste's face flushed. Well, we can certainly see where you get your ambitious nature. Marin, Nolan said softly, maybe we should. Should what, Nolan? I turned to him, waiting for him to defend me, to say anything meaningful. But he just sat there, trapped between his mother's expectations and my dignity. I stood up. Thank you for dinner, but I should go. I have an early meeting tomorrow with my business mentor. Oh yes, that little person, Celeste said. The one with the interesting background. I grabbed my purse, my hands shaking. At least he earned his success instead of marrying into it. The words hung in the air like smoke. Nolan's face went pale. Everett actually put his phone down. I'll walk you out, Nolan said quickly, but I was already heading for the door. Marin, wait, he called after me in the driveway. They mean well, they're just what, Nolan? Just trying to protect you from her gold-digging girlfriend? Just trying to maintain their precious family image. He ran his hands through his hair. You know it's not like that. Give them time. Time? I laughed bitterly. I have exactly 12 months to prove myself, Nolan. And I can't waste any more of it trying to win approval from people who've already decided I'm not good enough. I got in my car, leaving Nolan standing in the driveway, caught between two worlds. As I drove away, my phone buzzed with a text from Lyle. Got some interesting news about potential investors. Coffee tomorrow. I smiled grimly. Celeste Granger had no idea what she was up against. Game on, indeed. The coffee shop buzzed with morning energy as Lyle slid a folder across the table to me. Remember that boutique in Singapore I mentioned? They want to place a major order. We're talking serious numbers here. I flipped through the purchase order, my heart racing. I did the quick math in my head. This could put me halfway to my goal. Exactly. Lyle leaned back, his usual confident smile faltering slightly. But there's something else you should see. He pulled up an email on his phone and handed it to me. As I read, my stomach dropped. Someone had been contacting my potential business partners, warning them about working with me. The email contained detailed concerns about my company's stability and hints about my questionable business practices. The timing is interesting, Lyle said carefully. Right after your dinner with the Grangers. My hands clenched around my coffee cup. Celeste. You can't prove it's her. I don't need to prove it. I know. I pushed the coffee aside, suddenly nauseated. She's trying to sabotage me. My phone buzzed. Nolan again. I'd been avoiding his calls since the dinner disaster 3 days ago. This time, I answered. Hey, he said, sounding tired. Can we talk? Mother wants to apologize. She's hosting a lunch for some of her charity board members today and specifically asked if he'd come. I caught Lyle's warning look. An apology lunch? Really? Please? It would mean a lot to me. 2 hours later, I walked into the country club's private dining room, wearing my most professional dress, the one that made me feel like I could conquer the world, or at least survive lunch with Celeste Granger. Marin, darling. Celeste air-kissed my cheeks. I'm so glad you could join us. Ladies, this is Nolan's friend, Marin. Friend, not fiancé. I forced a smile as she introduced me to 3 impeccably dressed women who looked at me like I was a mildly interesting museum exhibit. Marin makes jewelry, Celeste explained, her tone suggesting I made macaroni necklaces in kindergarten. Though I hear she's trying to expand. How's that going, dear? Actually, I started, but one of the women, Barbara, cut in. Oh, Celeste mentioned something about that. Isn't there some inheritance situation? My blood froze. I looked at Celeste, who sipped her wine innocently. It came up in conversation, she said smoothly. We were all so concerned about the pressure you must be under, especially given your family's history. My family's history? Well, your father's gambling problems, dear, and those unfortunate business dealings. The room spun slightly. My father had struggled with addiction years ago, but he'd been clean for a decade. It was private family history that I'd only ever shared with Nolan. It's just, Celeste continued, we'd hate to see history repeat itself. Addiction can be genetic, you know, whether it's gambling or other compulsive behaviors. The other women nodded sympathetically. I stood up so quickly my water glass tipped over, spreading across the pristine white tablecloth like blood. I need to make a call, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Business emergency. In the hallway, I pulled up the Singapore boutique's email. Their concerns about my family history and financial stability suddenly made perfect sense. My phone buzzed with a text from Lyle. Singapore deals off. They heard some troubling rumors. Want to talk strategy. Another text came through, this time from Nolan. How's lunch going? Mother says you seem tense. I leaned against the wall, closing my eyes. Celeste wasn't just trying to drive me away from Nolan. She was actively trying to destroy my business, my reputation, my chance at the inheritance, all while maintaining her perfect society matron facade. Opening my eyes, I straightened my spine and typed a response to Lyle. Strategy meeting tomorrow. Time to fight fire with fire. If Celeste wanted to play dirty, fine. But she'd forgotten something crucial. I had nothing left to lose, and thanks to my grandfather's challenge, everything to gain. I walked back into the dining room, smile firmly in place. Sorry about that, ladies. Now, Celeste, you were saying something about family history? Let's talk about that. You want to do what? Lal stared at me across his office desk, eyebrows raised. The morning sun through his window cast harsh shadows across the investment proposals spread between us. Launch a luxury line. High-end pieces, exclusive materials, limited collections. I pushed forward the market research I'd spent 3 sleepless nights compiling. We target the exact social circle Celeste thinks I don't belong in. It's risky, Lyle said, flipping through the numbers. You need to invest almost everything you've saved, plus take out loans. I know. And if it fails, I lose everything. I stood up, pacing the office. But if it works, I'll have proof that I belong in their world. On my own terms. My phone buzzed. Another message from Nolan. Mother's asking about wedding dates. Maybe we should start planning. I ignored it, focusing instead on the prototype jewelry pieces I'd brought. The centerpiece was a necklace that had taken me weeks to perfect, platinum and black diamonds arranged in a pattern that echoed my grandfather's company logo. Lal picked up the necklace, studying it. This is different from your usual style. It's evolution. I took the piece from him, the metal cool against my palm. I'm done making pretty trinkets. These pieces tell a story. Celeste's story? My story. I set the necklace down carefully. Did you know she's been calling my suppliers? 3 more backed out this week. Lyle's expression darkened. That's crossing a line. She crossed that line weeks ago. I pulled up an email on my phone. But look what I found while doing market research. Apparently, before marrying Everett, Celeste worked as a salesgirl at a department store jewelry counter. Interesting timing, considering the Grangers' annual charity gala is next month. Very interesting. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it, especially since I'd just received an invitation to showcase my new collection there. From Celeste. From Barbara Thompson, one of her charity board friends. Turns out she was quite impressed by my entrepreneurial spirit at that lunch. I sat back down. Celeste doesn't know yet. The office door opened and Nolan walked in. My heart stopped. Surprise, he said weakly. Your assistant said you were here. Lyle stood smoothly. I'll give you 2 a moment. As he left, Nolan's eyes fell on the prototype necklace. That's different. It's for the new luxury line I'm launching. I watched his face carefully. The one your mother's been trying to sabotage. Marin, she's just protective. She's been calling my suppliers, spreading rumors about my family. My voice cracked slightly. And you've known about it, haven't you? His silence was answer enough. She mentioned something about checking into your background. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I told her it wasn't necessary, but you didn't stop her. I thought if she saw there was nothing to worry about, she'd accept you. I picked up the necklace, its weight suddenly significant. You know what's ironic? Your mother worked jewelry retail before meeting your father. She probably knows exactly how hard it is to build something from nothing. Nolan's face paled. How did you? Research. The same kind she's been doing on me. I moved toward the door. I'm showcasing at the charity gala next month. Will you be there? Of course, but he reached for my hand. Maybe we should wait on announcing the engagement. Give everyone time to adjust. I pulled away, my grandfather's challenge echoing in my head. Success wasn't just about money anymore. It was about proving I could stand on my own, even if it meant standing alone. You're right, I said quietly. We should wait. As I walked past him, Lal reappeared in the doorway. The investors are here, ready to present the new line. I straightened my spine, gripping my portfolio tighter. Actually, I have some last-minute changes to the business plan. Let's talk about exclusive distribution rights. Behind me, I heard Nolan leave without another word. Some battles you fight alone, and some victories you win for yourself. The ring felt heavy on my finger as I stared at the final production samples for my luxury line. Nolan had proposed last night, a quiet, almost apologetic affair at my apartment. Nothing like the grand gesture I'd once imagined. The timing's perfect, he'd said, sliding the family heirloom onto my finger. Maybe this will help Mother see you differently. My phone buzzed with another text from Lyle. Major problem with the gala showcase. Need to meet now. I found him pacing outside a downtown cafe, his usually calm demeanor shattered. They're pulling our spot in the showcase. What? Barbara promised. Barbara's been replaced as event chair. Lyle's expression was grim. Guess who's taking over? My stomach dropped. Celeste. She's restructuring the whole event. Your slot's been given to some French designer. I gripped the edge of a nearby table, my engagement ring catching the sunlight. She doesn't know about the proposal yet. Maybe that's why. Marin. A familiar voice cut through our conversation. I turned to see Iris walking toward us, shopping bags in hand. Her eyes fixed on my ring, widening in surprise. When did this happen? Last night. I touched the ring unconsciously. I was going to tell you. Over dinner tonight, I hope. Another voice joined us, Celeste appearing like a perfectly coiffed ghost, Barbara trailing behind her looking apologetic. Celeste, I managed, my voice steady despite my racing heart. Congratulations on chairing the gala. Yes, well, someone needed to maintain certain standards. Her eyes flicked to my ring, then back to my face. Though I see congratulations are in order for you as well. How? Surprising that Nolan didn't mention his plans. It was spontaneous, I said, watching her expression carefully. Spontaneous. She tested the word like it was foreign. Rather like your last-minute addition to our showcase. Barbara was quite enthusiastic about your involvement. Unfortunately, we've had to make some changes. Due to maintaining standards? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Celeste's smile tightened. Due to experience. The gala has a certain reputation to uphold. We can't risk featuring untested designers, especially those with questionable business practices. Iris stepped forward. Excuse me? Oh, you haven't heard? Celeste's voice dripped with false concern. There are some troubling rumors about financial irregularities in Marin's business. Anonymous tips to the business bureau, that sort of thing. My vision blurred at the edges. You're investigating my business? The board has a duty to protect our donors' interests. She adjusted her designer bag. Though I'm sure everything will sort itself out. Eventually, Nolan always did have a soft spot for rehabilitation projects. That's enough. Iris's voice cut through the tension. My daughter has accepted my son's proposal, Celeste interrupted smoothly, which makes this a family matter. Speaking of which, dinner tonight at 7? We should start discussing wedding plans. Something small and private might be best, given the circumstances. I looked down at my ring, then at the production samples in my bag, pieces I'd poured my heart and savings into, designed to prove I belonged in their world. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. You're right, I said quietly. This is a family matter. I slipped the ring off my finger and held it out to her. Give this back to Nolan. Tell him I'm sorry, but I can't marry someone who lets his mother fight his battles. Marin, Barbara started, but I was already walking away. The showcase starts at 8. I called over my shoulder. I'll see you there. You've been removed from the program, Celeste reminded me, her voice sharp. I turned back, smiling for the first time since she'd arrived. Check your email. Barbara wasn't the only board member impressed by my entrepreneurial spirit. And unlike you, I earned my spot in that showcase. Just like I earned everything else in my life. As I walked away, I heard Lal hurrying to catch up. Please tell me you have a plan. Oh, I do. I pulled out my phone, dialing a number I'd been saving. Remember those investors who are interested in exclusive distribution rights? Tell them I'm ready to talk. And Lyle, make sure they understand exactly who they're dealing with. The game had changed. Celeste wanted to play hardball? Fine. But she'd forgotten something crucial. I wasn't just fighting for an inheritance anymore. I was fighting for my future, on my own terms. The charity gala sparkled with wealth and pretension, exactly as I remembered from previous years. Only this time, I wasn't here as Nolan's plus one. I was here as competition. They're setting up your display in the East Wing, Lyle murmured, appearing at my elbow. Celeste tried to have it moved to the service corridor, but the other board members overruled her. I smoothed down my black dress, the one I designed my signature necklace to complement. And the investors? Front row for your presentation. Across the room, I caught Celeste holding court. Her perfectly coiffed head bent towards several society matrons. The whispers had already started, about my broken engagement, about the suspicious timing of my business expansion. Marin. Nolan's voice behind me made my spine stiffen. Can we talk? I turned to find him looking lost in his tuxedo, the one I'd helped him choose months ago. About what? How you let your mother sabotage my business. Or how you propose thinking it would fix everything. It's not that simple. Miss Calloway? A server appeared with a tablet. There's an issue with your display. Something about the security system? I followed her to find my entire collection locked behind a malfunctioning display case. The security code had been changed. Technical difficulties? Celeste's voice dripped with false concern. How unfortunate. Perhaps this is a sign you're not quite ready for this level of showcase. I've got it handled, I said, but my hands were shaking as I tried another override code. Do you? Like you had your engagement handled? She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Did you really think returning Nolan's ring would make you look noble? All it did was prove what I've known all along. You're not one of us. You're right. I straightened up, meeting her gaze. I'm not one of you. I'm better. Her eyes narrowed. Your presentation starts in 10 minutes. Without your collection, what exactly do you plan to show these people? The truth. I pulled out my phone, sending a pre-prepared signal to Lyle. The lights dimmed, and the massive screens around the ballroom flickered to life. There I was in my workshop crafting pieces from raw materials. Then came the sales figures, the growth charts, the international orders. What is this? Celeste hissed. My story, I said, as images of my grandfather's company logo dissolved into my new designs. But here's the interesting part. The screens shifted to show a young woman behind a jewelry counter, circa 1985. Celeste's face drained of color. Amazing what you can find in department store archives, I said quietly, especially when the salesgirl went on to marry the owner's son 6 months later. You had no right. Like you had no right to investigate my family, to spread rumors about my business. My voice carried just far enough to draw attention. The difference is I earned everything I have. Can you say the same? The ballroom had gone silent. All eyes on us. Nolan stepped forward, finally finding his voice. Mother? What's she talking about? But before Celeste could answer, another figure emerged from the crowd. Everett Granger, looking thunderous. Celeste, he said, his voice carrying. Is this true? Did you meet me while working as a salesgirl? The silence was deafening. In that moment, I should have felt triumphant. Instead, watching Celeste's carefully constructed world crumble, I felt hollow. I think, Everett continued, we need to discuss some things. Privately. As they left, Nolan caught my arm. Marin, wait. Don't. I pulled away. Just don't. I walked to the podium, my heels clicking against the marble floor. The investors were waiting. My collection was still locked away. But as I faced the crowd, I realized something. I'd won the battle. But at what cost? Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my voice steady despite the chaos in my heart. Tonight, I was going to show you a jewelry collection. Instead, I'm going to tell you a story about legacy, about truth, and about the price of revenge. Behind me, the screen showed my grandfather's challenge letter. Sometimes winning feels an awful lot like losing. But I was done playing by anyone else's rules, including my own. The investors loved my presentation. My phone buzzed with commitments and contracts before I even left the stage. But as the applause faded, all I could focus on was Nolan's empty chair in the front row. I found him in the garden, staring at the fountain where we'd first met 2 years ago. Your presentation was incredible, he said without turning around. You're going to hit your grandfather's goal. That's all you have to say? He finally faced me, his expression torn. What do you want me to say, Marin? That you were right about Mother? That I should have defended you? I wanted you to choose me. My voice cracked. Just once, I wanted you to choose me. By humiliating my family? By exposing my mother's past. She tried to destroy everything I built. And now you've destroyed everything she built. He ran his hands through his hair. Do you know what this will do to my father's business? To our family's reputation? A quiet voice behind us made us both jump. The truth rarely destroys anything worth keeping. Celeste stood there, her perfect makeup slightly smeared. She looked smaller somehow, more human. Mother. Nolan started, but she held up a hand. I came from nothing, she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. My father was a janitor. My mother cleaned houses. I worked that jewelry counter for 6 years before meeting your father, and I was good at it. But in this world, she gestured to the glittering gala behind us. In this world, the past is a weapon. So you used mine against me, I said. I used whatever I could to protect what I'd built. She met my eyes, just like you did tonight. The difference is, there is no difference. She stepped closer. We're exactly alike, Marin. That's what terrifies me. The truth of it hit me like a physical blow. In trying to prove I wasn't like them, I'd become exactly what I despised. Your father knows everything now, Celeste continued. About my past, about what I did to sabotage your business. He's reevaluating things. Mother, he loves you, Nolan protested. Yes, but love without trust is just another pretty piece of jewelry. All shine, no substance. She turned to me. You've won, Marin. The investors, the showcase, your grandfather's challenge, it's all yours. But tell me, was revenge everything you hoped it would be? I thought about my grandfather's letter, about his challenge to prove myself. Had I proved myself, or had I just proved I could be as ruthless as anyone else? I never wanted revenge, I said quietly. I just wanted to belong. No. Nolan's voice was firm. You wanted to win, and now you have. Congratulations. He walked away, leaving me alone with Celeste. We stood in silence, two women who'd fought so hard for acceptance that we'd forgotten what we were fighting for. Your collection, she finally said. The one locked in the display case? The override code is my wedding date. The day I thought I'd finally made it, finally belonged. She smiled sadly. Ironic, isn't it? As she turned to leave, I called after her. Why are you telling me this? Because someone once told me that true legacy isn't about what you have, it's about what you leave behind. She paused. Your grandfather was right about one thing, Marin. You do have potential. Don't waste it proving points to people who've already lost their way. I watched her disappear into the gala, then pulled out my phone. The investment numbers were staggering, more than enough to claim my inheritance. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt empty. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. You okay? I looked at the fountain, remembering simpler times. The water sparkled under the garden lights, each droplet catching and reflecting something different, something true. No, I typed back. But I think I finally understand what Grandpa's challenge was really about. It was never about the money. It was about learning the difference between winning and succeeding, between revenge and redemption, between belonging and becoming. I had some decisions to make. 6 months after the gala, I stood in my grandfather's study, now part of my mother's house. The lawyer placed 2 documents on the desk, proof of my earnings and the inheritance paperwork. Congratulations, Miss Calloway, he said. You've met all conditions of the will. I stared at the papers but didn't reach for them. Instead, I pulled out a 3rd document from my bag. I'd like to make some changes. Mom looked up from her spot by the window. Marin, I'm establishing a foundation, I explained, for young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. The inheritance will fund it. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. All of it, except for one piece. I touched the necklace at my throat, the one from my luxury line, redesigned with a new purpose. This design is being mass-produced now. Affordable versions for working women who want something beautiful but practical. Something earned, not inherited. The doorbell rang and Mom went to answer it. She returned looking puzzled, followed by Celeste Granger. I hope I'm not interrupting, Celeste said, looking different in simple slacks and a sweater. Gone was the society matron armor. We were just finishing some paperwork, I said. Yes, I heard about your success. She smiled slightly. Everett and I have been following your company's growth. He's impressed. And you? I'm learning to be impressed by different things these days. She set a small box on the desk, like courage and grace. Inside the box was a worn jewelry price tag from 1985, bearing her employee number. My first sale, she explained. I kept it to remind myself where I came from. Somewhere along the way, I started hiding from it instead. And Nolan? I asked, though I already knew he'd taken a job across the country. Finding his own way, finally. She touched the price tag gently. Sometimes losing everything helps you find what matters. I'm donating the inheritance, I said, surprising myself by sharing this, to help others build something of their own. Your grandfather would be proud. She reached for her purse. And so would mine. He was a janitor, remember? He always said true wealth isn't what you have, it's what you give. As she turned to leave, She paused. The spring charity gala needs a new chairperson. Someone who understands both sides of the jewelry counter. I thought about declining, about maintaining the safe distance I'd built. But maybe bridges were better than walls. I'll think about it, I said. After she left, Mom wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You okay? Yeah. I picked up the inheritance paperwork, then the foundation documents. You know, when Grandpa set this challenge, I thought it was about proving myself to everyone else. But it was never about them, was it? Your grandfather had his flaws, Mom said, but he knew what you needed better than you did. Sometimes the hardest person to prove yourself to is yourself. I signed the foundation papers, watching my signature dry. My phone buzzed with a text from Lyle about our latest sales figures, another record month. But those numbers didn't matter as much anymore. Want to get lunch? Mom asked. That new cafe downtown? Actually, I said, gathering my things, I was thinking about that little diner where you and Grandpa used to go. The one with the terrible coffee and the great stories. She smiled, understanding. Perfect. As we left, I glanced at my reflection in the study window. The woman looking back wasn't the same one who'd opened that lawyer's letter a year ago. She was stronger, wiser, and maybe a little scarred. But mostly, she was herself. My phone buzzed again, an email from an unknown address. The subject line read, "From one salesgirl to another." Inside was a list of small jewelry businesses owned by women from humble backgrounds, all struggling to break into the high-end market. I smiled, thinking about bridges and counters and the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. And sometimes the greatest legacy isn't what you inherit, but what you choose to build.